Just wondering though, some of the things that they have proposed, I mean, to ensure that we begin to grow the Naira is this song about patronizing made in Nigeria goods. How do you think that helps?
That's a farce. You can't start, first of all, having people who are producing. So where is the production going to come from? Will they be borrowing at 20-something%? Who's going to be buying the goods? The same person who is losing 10% out of his income on an annual basis? What rate of exchange are you talking about? All manufacturers depend on the foreign exchange market to meet their requirements. And you know, the simple thing is that if you don't listen to this argument, you are going to have a problem, because you'll keep running against yourself in many ways, and you would come out and self-confess, as the central bank governors have all done in the last 12 or so years. Soludo agreed that the substitution of Naira allocations for dollar revenue is a problem for him. Okay, in the process in 2007, he wanted his strategic agenda for the Naira, which this station should know very well was a template of what I had been preaching for 4 previous years. Okay, later down the road, Sanusi came in, and I'm sure you remember the quote, "Isn't it a wonderful business model? You give your money to the banks and you borrow it back." I'm sure you remember it. And MFLA also came down the line and said, "We give our money to the banks to lend to the real sector. They don't. They give it back to us. We borrow it back," as if to say they force them to to borrow it back and all that. You know, piece all these things together. It's a deliberate attempt to create, how would I say, deepen poverty in this country. And they have succeeded, because even at times when you had gloriously bountiful dollar reserves, what happened? The process of infusing those dollar earnings into the country exacerbated the liquidity problem, because while you were allocating the dollars to the 3 tiers of government, you sat on the dollars, you printed or created fresh Naira values, gave it to the banks, and then you give the banks a cash reserve ratio of X, 20%, 25%, meaning that the banks could leverage, knowing fully well. That's why I told you the story of the bank committee chairman saying that, look, we don't have any problem with liquidity. Central bank has been very good to us. They took it out one way and they pushed it back. And not only that, they pushed more back. And I reminded you, I said in 2 days' time, 2nd of March, the central bank is mopping up another 300 and something billion. And even though it's 5%, why should you borrow money you don't need? At a time that you say your real sector doesn't have any funds, and then you placate the public by saying we are throwing intervention funds into a glass that is already full.
You know, one wonders, why would they deliberately want to create poverty in the system? Because, I mean, the social effects...
Self-interest. Why would they want to steal 2-point-something billion? Is it normal? It's self-interest.
Because if a system can correct it...
The system, I'm telling, I mean, look, anybody who is benefiting... Look, the banks make over 500 billion Naira as interest charges from government's money, government borrowing back its own money, even with TSA. The banks make a lot of money from the reality that because the Naira exchange rate is weak, deregulation can never happen. Therefore, they lend 25-30%, maybe even 40% of bank lending goes to the for the importation of fuel. Who's making it? At maybe 17%. In the process, these oil companies have to buy dollars. Who makes the gain on the dollar transactions? The same banks. So it's clear that nobody who is benefiting from this skewed deliberately, I say it with all sincerity, and it must be obvious to you because, you know, normal people don't do things in the manner in which I have painted.
I'd hate to think that when this mess, because of even economists, because they bring up different solutions, they bring up different readings, and listening to you talk about liquidity and so much about the you know, trying to simplify it in simplistic terms, it would seem as if something really has not been right. Some would ask, if you were in charge of CBN, the CBN, what would you have done differently that would take us out of this mess?
You see, it's not me or anything. It's you, Suleiman. If you were there, wouldn't you use common sense? The picture I've painted for you, is that common sense? No. So there's nothing special in what I'm saying. The reality is, of course, reality, of course, is that you guys have been fed with so much falsehood, you even believe the falsehood. Because you do believe that mopping up is a progressive exercise. It's fraud. Would you borrow your own money back? Nobody is telling me they don't do that. They have all confessed, all three past central bank governors. I'm not pulling these things from the air, but they're hoping that you don't connect the dots. Okay, and you haven't.
But there is a problem. We'd like you to know. I mean, you have identified the fact that this money too is not trickling down. And it's not trickling down because of a certain reason. It would seem it's just hanging somewhere, and the central bank obviously has to do something about that. Maybe that's the reason why it borrows its money, its own money back. Do you think that they can circumvent the process? Should the banks be circumvented?
Well, I am concerned you asked that question because the reality is that you obviously don't see how much racketeering that goes on in the area of auctioning dollars to banks or even borrowing the change, as the case may be. So for you to say, it means that you believe they're doing a wonderful job, which they are not. Because at the end of the day, what you need to do is to change the market paradigm in such a way that the Naira is not deliberately disadvantaged by the same people who are supposed to be the handlers of the Naira.
Deliberately?
Deliberately, yes. I mean, it must be, look, do you think they don't have intelligent people in government who know that it doesn't make sense? The people who are doing it, the principal characters, have told you that this is what they do. They say it to you and they expect you to say, sorry that you can't help. But you're the one causing it. If you turned the paradigm, the market paradigm, in such a manner that you now had these dollar certificates instead of your Naira substitution and all that, what would happen? First, you put a halt to further creation of excess Naira in the market. In the process of doing so, I'm coming down to your point to say let the thing trickle down. It can never trickle down in the manner in which you're saying, even though, because they have tried several times to let it trickle down by throwing the subventions, it never comes down. But if you had a situation where you had dollar certificates, what happens? You would find that suddenly the banks would now say, a minute, the central bank is not borrowing treasury bills, and the central bank has gotten wise. They're not borrowing money they don't need anymore, okay? So what are we going to do? Where are we going to make money? Besides, they're not even auctioning dollars to us anymore because they now realize that we do a lot of round tripping and things like that. They're now saying, everybody get your dollar certificates, go to the bank and change it into Naira. What happens? The Naira liquidity thing disappears over time. When that happens, you now find that you have in the marketplace a stronger Naira because now the Naira the market is skewed in favor of the Naira because you now have a situation where everyone with dollar certificates is heading for the banks to change it because they can't spend it, they can't steal it and carry it away. Like the issue of when you take the Naira, you go and buy your dollars and carry, you can't do that. So that it's not popular for anyone to say, accept what Mr. Boy is saying, because it closes a lot of leakages. The issue of saying poor people, look, if you had a situation where, as in a bakery, for example, where you have so much droppings of bread and things like that, what do you think would happen to the rest there? They'll be huge and slow and sluggish and all that. But if you see a church rat where there's no excess liquidity around, what happens? He's smart and, man, when he dashes past, you wonder, did I see something? And that's the reality. These are, I'm making these examples for you to know that what's happening can be replicated in other parts of our lives.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Henry Boyer, an economist, painting a picture of what we need to do. Well, we will be back in a minute. Don't go away.